in the event we need to evacuate the room. I am honored to be able to introduce our distinguished speakers this evening, Mr. James Carville and Ms. Mary Madeline. James the Ragin' Cajun Carville is America's best-known political consultant. His long list of electoral successes evidences a knack for steering overlooked campaigns to unexpected landslide victories and for remaking political underdogs into upset winners. His winning streak began in 1986 when he managed the gubernatorial victory of Robert Casey in Pennsylvania. In 1987, Carville helped guide Wallace Wilkinson to the governor's seat in Kentucky. Carville continued his winning streak in New Jersey with Frank Lautenberg, elected to the U.S. Senate. He next managed the successful 1990 gubernatorial campaign of Georgia's Lieutenant Governor Zell Miller, including a tough primary win over Atlanta Mayor Andrew Young. And in 1991, Carville, who had already become prominent in political circles, drew national attention when he led Senator Harris Wofford from 40 points behind in the polls to an upset landslide victory over former Pennsylvania Governor and U.S. Attorney General Dick Thornburgh. But his most prominent victory was in 1992 when he helped William Jefferson Clinton win the presidency. Mary Madeline is one of the most celebrated and popular conservative voices in America. As an author, television and radio host, and widely sought-after political consultant, pundit, and public speaker, she has become noted for her straightforward manner and insightful political repartee. Among her many roles and accomplishments, she has served under President Ronald Reagan, made her mark as George H.W. Bush's campaign director, and most recently as assistant to President George W. Bush, and assistant and counselor to Vice President Dick Cheney, making her the first White House official to hold that double title. Together, this dynamic duo is a political powerhouse. James and Mary are known for their candor, wit, and energy. They've co-authored the best-selling political campaign book, All's Fair, Love, War, and Running for President, which we are selling this evening along with Love and War, 20 Years, 3 Presidents, 2 Daughters, and 1 Louisiana Home. And finally, they are active members in their community of New Orleans, where they live with their 2 daughters. Please join me in welcoming Mr. James Carville and Mary Madeline to the stage. They're already here. Sorry. And I'm going to give them plaques as tokens of our appreciation for coming and joining us and sharing their insights and experiences.
You're going to give us plaques before we say anything.
All right, so they want to have an informal conversation with everyone. So I'm going to start by asking a few questions. I've been asked to join them. I feel very privileged to do so. And then we're going to ask people to come up for questions. And please, we can't take questions from the audience because we want to hear them on the recording. So please come to one of the 2 mics on the side. So, can you hear me? I've been, I think we can start by asking what's going on with the Republican Party.
Does anybody here have a theory? You can get a good TV job if you do. Well, first, let me say on behalf of both of us, well, let me say to you, I haven't seen you in forever. I've been snowed in back east. Hi, honey, how are you?
Emerson says to call.
We have 2 kids. To say this about our girls, one is a raving liberal and one is a conservative. They're highly opinionated. I don't know where they got this, but the one who's a conservative has daddy wrapped around her little finger. I don't know how that works. So thank you for having us. We love being with people who care about politics. We love being with young people. I'm on the boards of Tulane and Loyola. He teaches at Tulane. He's an excellent teacher. So I am unaffiliated in this race. I'm very much a conservative. I'm very, very right. He's very, very wrong. He's for the H-bomb, as you might anticipate. But I think that given our age and this cycle and your sophistication, did you know your good doctor here was in the Clinton campaign with James? So she has pictures to prove it. Honey, what a studly Dudley you were. She's in a picture of you. And R. Even though we're at the age where we can live without sex but not our glasses. It's been a long time. So I hope whatever I say about I'm just kidding. Don't get on. I hope that we can bring to our conversation tonight the perspective of our years of doing this. And I can't deny our partisanship, but an impartial observation. So I would say what's going on with the Republican Party did not start with Donald Trump, and it did not start with the Tea Party, but it's been a process that's been unfolding, this anger and this anxiety for over a decade, probably many decades, as we transformed from, you're all in history or study poli-sci, as we've transitioned from an industrial economy to the information age, and there's always anxiety in change, and this was happening concomitantly with the rise of the global economy. So all of that has contributed to an anxiety in the electorate, which was being unmet by the national government. The states, our federalism works, the states are working, New Orleans works. We moved there when James said sugar. I'm a Yankee from Chicago, so anything that follows sugar. He could say anything. I don't even have to hear, sugar, we're going to become a sliver on a river. Well, that was 10 years ago, and look what we've done in New Orleans. I'm going to make a pitch later for New Orleans, which is what our second book is about. So I know we both believe, we're both optimists, we're both candlelighters. We believe that change is certain, progress is not, and that we can affect progress. And I think the Republican field and the anger and anxiety in the electorate, not just conservatives are mad because their party, my party, it's my party and I'll cry if I want to. I banned myself from TV on my mother's admonition, if you don't have something nice to say nothing at all. I'm very upset and have been for some time with my party, but I think the anger and the unprecedented nature of this cycle on both sides, including the unlikely, implausible rise of Bernie Sanders, is a manifestation. Whoa, okay, are you young people that are clapping? Do you know, I just want to say one thing, I'll turn over to Corporal Cue Ball here. And he is the cutest, most sexy man I ever know. Do you know that just read this today, 59% of the volunteers in Iowa, real volunteers, have done at least one shift, and it's hard to be a volunteer in Iowa, are under the age of 34. So 29% are 18 to 24. So his candidacy is being buoyed by the youth cohort, and that his challenge is to get that cohort to the voting booths and to the caucus halls.
Right. Well, first of all, thank y'all. Let me join Mary. I had just a terrific time today. I talked to a class of young people, and y'all very fortunate here. Your students they were engaged, they were lively, they were interested, they were informed, and boy, were they diverse. I mean, this is the real America right here at this school. I mean, real America. And they always say that the future happens in California. Well, if what I saw today is the future, I am more optimistic than I was before today, because I was very optimistic about what I saw. And we were scheduled to give a kind of a lecture and this and that, and then you would write questions on a sheet of paper, and we decided we'd rather engage the audience and sit here and have a conversation with you and have you ask the questions and go back and forth. Look, I think a lot of what Mary said is true. I think that there's a great deal of frustration out there. I think the financial crisis caused people to be frustrated. I think the Republicans are frustrated with their party. Obviously, the rise of Bernie Sanders is indicative of something that the sort of politics is broken, corrupt, whatever. But I think Trump is just a giant exposure. I mean, all he does, he runs sort of against the party. Yeah, by politicians, their body confirms what people thought. What's interesting about him is that he doesn't, he's giving people an explanation for their lives. If you are, and we know this statistically, if you are a white guy 30 years ago and you made a decision not to go to college, your life has not worked out anywhere near as well as you thought it would. And what's fascinating is that the guy that won the Nobel Prize, a man by the name of Angus Deaton at Princeton, got the data and teased out the data, and the only people in the United States whose life expectancy has gone down are middle-aged, white, non-college males. And they're dying of chronic liver disease, prescription drug overdose, and diabetes, all of which are some form of suicide. Now, Trump is clearly saying to people, the reason that this happened to you is stupid politicians and immigrants. I think it's a bad prescription. I think to some extent it's the wrong answer, but it is an answer. And I'll be smart and we will win again. I think it's a simplistic answer, but he has, on our side, you think that 67% of the Republicans are voting for either Trump, Ted Cruz, Ben Carson, or Carly Fiorina, who are what you would call disruptors. 40, depending on what national poll you see, but roughly 40% of Democrats say they're going to vote for Bernie Sanders. He's the ultimate disruptor. He doesn't want to make college more affordable. He's making it free. But more like he didn't want to make health care more accessible. He wants to not just have that universal health care, but universal dental care too. I mean, he wants to upend the entire. He didn't want to make the banking system more responsible. He wants to upend the whole thing. So, and if you are frustrated, or you feel like you want to get a message to somebody, you want somebody to hear you, he's the perfect vehicle for that. Now, obviously, I would argue at length with you that this is not the right thing to do. And what's kind of impressive is most all of the commentators, academics, and everything is on a universal kind of pushback here. But I think both Trump and Sanders, depending on where you come from, and Trump doesn't run, he calls them the conservatives. I mean, I would never summon the New Orleanians, or you would never say the Californians say this. His argument is not, and he doesn't want to, I'm not cutting anybody's Social Security or Medicare. He actually says, I agree with Bernie and Hillary on prescription pricing. But he's offering people a kind of exception. I think Sanders is certainly way out of what we would normally think of, what I certainly grew up with thinking what a liberal was or a progressive was. I mean, he's sort of jumped the shark in that sense. But I think it is, and I think this is a phenomenon, by the way, I think this phenomenon is going to continue in American politics. The most talked about book right now is a book that just came out by, everybody agrees, a really world-class macroeconomist at Northwestern in Evanston, who basically theorizes that the age of progress, of fast growth, is now behind us. That technology has not brought anything about, that basically human life stopped improving at 1940 or 1960. And I was sort of thinking of that my dorm room, when my daughter starts LSU, doesn't look much different than hers is going to look. I mean, I had air conditioning, I had plumbing, I had a telephone, had a television. And we think people didn't have that in 1900. I mean, think of the quantum leap that life took between, 1900 and 1950. And now we thought that technology was going to take us to the new frontier, but it is not altogether clear that that will. And if that happens, we're going to see a lot more of what we're seeing in U.S. politics, is my point. And it's not altogether. There's a lot of people that push back very hard against Gordon's thesis. He's an academic, one guy with an opinion. But it's not an uninformed or crazy opinion that he has. So we may be in for increased turmoil as we go out in the future here.
Can I just say to my husband, if you think Emerson Norman Carville's dorm room is going to look like yours, don't open your American Express bill, because she has the whole thing already decorated, and I guarantee you it's not in your Carville
You're right.
taste.
I had 2 pair of shoes. She has 200 pair of shoes, but it's still shoes. Where the people that went before me, had. I'm just saying that.
He has the same 2 pairs of shoes. Listen, he has been dressing this way for 60 years.
Yes, you're exactly right. When I was there, I had a khaki pants, a blue shirt, and a blue blazer. And if you like the socks,
Those are new.
I like that. Those are kind of new. Yeah, and some American flag socks. I didn't have the American flag socks, but I haven't changed. You're right. Since 1962, this is it.
Can I ask then, if the mainstream candidates or more moderate candidates don't seem to be answering the needs of the American public, what do you think the problem is? Is our main problem today in our election process? Is it in the governing process, or do we just need to elect better candidates or good candidates?
And this is your field of expertise, and I think it's a combination of a lot of issues that are almost cliche at this point. Often overlooked is redistricting, which has reduced the competition of ideas and has permitted less public service-minded candidates to win. I think only some at the largest percentage of competitive seats is about 15%. Well, if you don't have competition, you don't have innovation, and you add to that the opacity that is of our regulatory system, are not money in campaigns, but money in influencing regulations. So it's not the rule of law or an even playing field. It's regulations written not in the democratic process, with no transparency, to disadvantage competitors or advantage. Okay, so all these things that happen, then you add to that, and I say this as a conservative, but as an American, when citizens think people don't really like to be involved in politics, we're whack jobs. Okay, we're just like, people don't really live like they want. Apathy is a good. I mean, the founders wanted informed citizenry and a participatory citizen, but the citizens want to expect that their leaders to lead and that they can trust them. Well, trust in all institutions has diminished for good reason. It's not just part of, some portion of it is the prevalence of negativity in reporting, but a lot of it is for real. So when people went through the TARP, and the stimulus and all of that buyout business, that their money was used, they paid for the risk-taking, they lost everything, their equity was diminished, the cost of living for them goes up, college tuitions, unaffordable health care premiums, all that's gone up, and the perpetrators of the collapse of the economy, they're getting along just fine. This is where the left meets the right. And then if you really dig into it, if any of you have seen The Big Short, and you probably knew this anyways, that policy of those CDOs and all that was predicated on a government policy that incentivized loaning to unworthy borrowers. So they're like, what? We have no control. So then they do what they think is it will result in a response. If I speak, if I get active, if I campaign, particularly if I vote, I get people to vote. I stay informed, well, then I can change the system. Well, this one, so there was particularly in the Republican side, blowout elections and midterm elections, two successive ones, which resulted in the greatest number of seats at all levels for Republicans since the Civil War, to no response. Nothing changed. It got worse. Everything that they were complaining about got worse. And when conservatives delivered the political Viagra to the Congress and they remained impotent, I don't know how else to think. It just outraged us, and that's a perspective. But Americans have a view of that. It's harder to start a small business, harder to maintain a small business. You can't send your kids to college. We're the first generation that's not going to leave the country better off for their, all of this is an unresponsive national government. Now, this is juxtaposed with state governments that are working. Governors, and it's not a bipartisan thing or a kumbaya thing. It's like outcome-based. If it works, we're going to do it. If it doesn't work, we're going to stop doing it. We work together in a volunteer basis for our mayor in New Orleans. He's a Democrat, but he got 67% of the black vote, 67% of the white vote, majority of both parties, all income groups, and we are a premier 21st century city today. And his thing was, if you got an idea, my door is open. If you're going to come in here and bitch, go away. And it's working. I mean, it's just common sense. It's measurable. We can apply labels to it, and populist and this conservative, liberal, progressive, whatever it is. It's really common sense. If you're in engineering or you're measuring things, measure twice, cut once. Okay, that can apply to public policy.
Yeah, thanks. A lot of things, but let me try to focus a little bit at the college teacher. Let's focus on two. But one of the things is I don't know how you do it, is sorting. Right? Democrats overwhelmingly live in cities, and Republicans live everywhere else. All right? I'll give you a couple of quick examples of what I'm talking about. When you get home tonight, Google 2012 election returns by county. And you look at the map and you said, my God, Romney must have won in a landslide. Because it's just a giant country of red with some blue splotches along the coast and a few in the upper Midwest. Right? If it is so, the urban concentration is so profound with Democrats, if 3 counties, Romney would have broken even, not carried. If he would have broken even in Broward, Florida, which is Fort Lauderdale, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Cuyahoga, Ohio, which is Cleveland, he would have won the electoral vote. As it turned out, he didn't even come close. But he did just 3 counties. Pennsylvania has 18 congressional districts. Obama won Pennsylvania by 5 points. You know how many congressional districts he carried? 5. So you're producing a result where the state is significantly Democratic, but the congressional delegation is overwhelmingly Republican. And this is now some of it is gerrymandering, some of it is this and that, but most of it is just a natural sorting. The second thing that I find that is that you hear a lot is this is not the country we used to have. And guess what? It's not. But when I walked in that classroom today, that wasn't the country I grew up in. And it's not going to be, and get over it. All right? It's just the country is moving on. And we have to figure out how we do that. And how we, in the coastal places do, pretty well. They're different. They're more democratic. It's a different coalition. And other places are here, and so we become, very not just divided by a lot of things, but we're very geographically divided. And geographically, not just the coastlines, but the cities, and the percent of people that live in cities that are Democratic has never been higher, and the percent of people that live outside of cities that are not has never been lower. And I think what we miss, one of the things we miss is that there is very little interaction. And most of the people in the Congress are fearful of a primary, not a general election. But you're not going to believe this. When I started in politics, California was a reliably Republican state in presidential years. And West Virginia was a reliably, California and New Jersey always would vote Republican. And, President Bush, Party 1, carried California in 1988, fairly comfortably.
I was there.
Right. So the country is changing and trying to adapt to it. And, you know, and again, I graduated from law school. I always tell people this. I told you the other day. When I graduated from Military Law School, Japan and Germany were still flat on their back from World War II. China was run by a madman. There was no competition. And there was one African-American guy and 3 women in my classroom. Well, I run the world. But I had no competition. I didn't have to deal with Toyotas or BMWs or, you know, women or African-Americans, Asians, nothing. It was it. It was good. Well, you know what? That don't happen anymore. That's not the world, you know, and so people, you know, they got to feel that way. They got to adjust, and that's the kind of what's going on. And we have this kind of segregation, if you will, of parties into the city and out of the cities.
What do you think each of your parties will look like in 20 years, the issues and the people?
Well, let me pivot off of what he just said. I think if you're a hammer, the whole world's a nail, okay? So if you see, we define terms differently. When conservatives say, or when Trump says, and he's not a conservative, or when anybody says, we want it to make America great again, that doesn't mean socially and economically segregated. It means like aspirational, and all men are created equal, but not all men equally create, okay? So it's a system that rewards merit and striving, but doesn't let, you know, as it should be. So this is not, when we say great again, we, meaning all Americans, and regardless of party, we mean a country that is optimistic, that is innovative, that is not hampered by an overreaching government. It's the same issues the founders had to deal with, and whatever the parties are going to look like. I just wrote a paper today on the first established parties weren't even until 1800, Adams and Jefferson, and they've changed and evolved and been called many different things over the decades. But there are essentially 2 different philosophies of governance and 2 different philosophies of leaders. There are leaders who who don't trust the people and are not, if not autocratic, have a superiority. They're technocrats, and they think the government, the answers are in some bureaucracy or some technology or something like that. And then there's those that it's messy, but they believe in a representative republic. Well, that's not new to us. It's not new to parties. I think in 20 years, with the influx of young people into both parties, they will, if we stay a representative republic, it will reflect the values of that generation, as each previous generation's politics did. And this generation is unique. When our kids are, I had them late, let's see, it was 42 and 45, which I'm not advising any of you young people to wait to your 40s to have kids with a man like this. So one good thing I'll say about Hillary Clinton, when I was in labor with our first kid, she called because she knew James would be crazy. And at that very moment, I had to quit pushing and said, give that man an epidural. He was screaming. But Okay? So the point of when having kids late, we didn't get married to have kids. I got accidentally pregnant when I was 40. Who does that? I mean, we were already married. But these kids, so you're like, all mothers, I think, are like with it. Oh my, our kids they can't do all of it. You know, it's gonna damage their brains. These kids are smarter, and the kids that he teaches, and the kids that I work with, and the kids are young people are responsible for the restoration and recovery of New Orleans. They can Snapchat, Instagram, text, email, read, listen to music, watch TV, yell at their mother, eat, do all of it simultaneously. And guess what? Their brains are bigger. So they grew up in an age of options. They're the iPad generation. Their brains work differently. They're used to not having many more ways to get to an end than we did, our generation did. So I'm very optimistic about politics going into the future. And I loved what, James is a great, astoundingly good teacher, but his kids are so, they give me such great hope for the future. So I think that all this, there's constant generational churning. The average age of the Democratic leadership is somewhere around Jurassic Park, you know, which he would agree. And the average age of the incoming senators in the last cycle on the Republican side was in the mid-40s. So that, you know, the politics and system should reflect the influx of the ideas. The problem now in both parties and everything that's going on, there's anachronistic programs from another era, from the industrial age, and we've not had either the political will or the corrupt freeness, if you will, to be able to reform. But I feel like we can because the states and the cities are.
I think you asked this is the money question. And I think the answer is profoundly different, but in different ways. Every cycle that I have been involved in, and it's too many for me to remember, it's always the same thing. It's always you turn the TV on. These people, this is the most important election ever. Here we stand on the precipice. If not us, who? If not now, when? The generation, the world, the universe, the Milky Way, all depends on what the voters of the United States do on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November.
He's quoting himself.
And there used to be, everybody says the same thing. It's every election. We stand, you know, and it was back then a Super Bowl in New Orleans back in the 70s, and it was a running back. He was pretty good, but for the Dallas Cowboys named Dwayne Thomas. And in the middle of the whole hype, he said, if the Super Bowl is the ultimate game, how come they play it again next year? So we go through these cycles, and then kind of, one party wins, you have an inauguration, people get happy, the other party's this, and they mount together, they put a campaign together, and you go through it. If the consequences to the respective parties in this cycle are more draconian than any time I've ever seen, and let me say what I'm talking about. If the Democrats lose, they will have, and the purpose of a political party is to attain for its members to have political power. That's why it exists. They will not have the White House. They will have the Senate. I mean, if they win the presidency, they can win the Senate in a walk. They're obviously going to win the House in a walk. They'll have the federal courts and be able to remake the federal courts in 4 years in ways that we can't imagine. They have a majority of the state, both houses of the state legislature, a majority of the governors. Our two leading presidential candidates are now 74 and 69, respectively. Our House and Senate leadership are both over 75 or 80. The party will be, now, it will not fracture to the extent that the Democratic coalition will look roughly the same, but it would have entirely, the Democratic convention, particularly if they lose in 2016, in 2020, will be unrecognizable to you today. And the party will be like, all right, this is it. Now, before you get to feeling too good if you're a Republican, if they lose, they're done. Rich Preber said this. He says, if we lose this, we're cooked. Because the coalition, it will become evident. You're 65% wrong track country, all right? You're asking for a third term, which is very hard. And the Republicans say, if our coalition and our politicians can't win a race, and more importantly, the people who vote in the Republican Party will say, if we can't win a race under these conditions, we're never going to win one. And they'll be right. And then they will fracture. And you know, and because whoever, and they very good, they don't do, like Democrats, we lose, we go off, you know, we sing Kumbaya, and we got to get together and go team, go. They try to kill each other. All right? And if they, you know, if they nominate a conservative, then the moderates are going to say we were too conservative. If they nominate a moderate, the party it'll be Republican Party, 1854, 2016, RIP. And it will also be, and again, just given the headwinds that the Democrats are running into, it will become apparent to the Republican Party that that coalition cannot win a presidential election. That would be the 6 out of the last 7 presidential elections that they've lost the popular vote, and they'll frighten it. So it's a very good question, and the short-term answer of it, and I'm pretty sure, you know, everything that you do in this business is a little bit of a guess and a little bit of other, but I suspect on this particular question, I'm right.
No, I completely agree with this, if I can augment that. And can I agree with the kumbaya versus we don't like to lose? I worked for Lee Atwater, his chief of staff. He said, show me a good loser, I'll show you a loser. So when I was his chief of staff, we had a softball, an annual softball competition with the Democratic National Committee. And he fired me because I didn't find a ringer. And we lost that game. It's softball. I mean, so yes, okay, we do have a constitution that, but this is not about that. I think our party is, it doesn't reflect what I said earlier about the 2 different philosophies of governance that have been self-government and democracy and leadership that have been present since, we were talking about this earlier, Athenian democracy and stuff. So there's one party, or let me put it like this. The Boston University professor, Angelo Cordellis, I think it's 5 years ago, increasingly there's a country class, there's people, and there's the ruling class, and they're detached. So I think we've been running our campaigns, I can't speak for this, we've been running our campaigns in this anachronistic way that is usually the military strategists have figured this out. You always fight use the strategy from the last battle. You can't do that anymore. There are pieces in the paper in the past couple of days about, well, a couple of weeks, donors upset that they've raised and spent unprecedented millions of dollars to no effect, okay? So money doesn't matter anymore, message matters. And and what they spend the money on is TV. Do you watch political commercials? Do you know what Bernie Sanders things that go viral are these feel the burn things where he shows all of his staff people, his campaign workers eating hot peppers, and then they have those, what do you call those GIFs, flames, GIF, I don't know what that, we don't even Twitter or tweet or whatever. If you're over 30 and you like to have a glass of wine at night, I advise against Twitter accounts, whatever there. But anyways, he's got, you know, we keep doing it the old way with no philosophy, and God love Mitt Romney, and I did. He was apologizing he's calling himself a severe conservative. That's like saying it's worse than saying the conservatives, okay? One of your colleagues was saying what young people like about Bernie is his authenticity. And that's, we're so inauthentic. We're like that brick girl or that brick guy. Who's that guy? John Edwards. You want authenticity? I can fake that. Okay, young people are sick of that, and the system's infused with it. So I do think our party will blow up it'll blow up for sure if we nominate what's a moderate? That's a speed. That's not a philosophy. We got to nominate somebody who's actually presents a contrast to to a liberal, progressive, whatever you want to call it, philosophy, and doesn't fall apart in the face of being called a bigot or this or that or being demonized. And they have a real debate. I think that would engage young people, and that would result in a victory for an idea, not for a political strategy.
Yeah, I think they have a little trouble getting there. I think, my favorite was Sarah Palin, and holy rollers, kids on strollers, pro bowlers, abscess molars,
That was good. That was Tina Fey, honey. I know.
That was good. I just could not, I can't get enough of her.
Okay, he's not kidding.
Here's my question. Who did Trump pay more, Sarah Palin or Jerry Falwell Jr.?
He literally means he can't get enough of Sarah Palin. Remember when she came to CNN and because he literally his tongue came out. He was drooling. He followed her down the hall. Don't you deny it. James.
Look, I think she is as sexy as she can be. I also think she had a concussion, but anyway.
He liked Michelle Bachmann, too.
Yeah. I just like these right-wing brunettes, I got a thing for them. But if you just look at I can't get it. So the news all day is Trump, I'm not going to the Fox debate. He has completely sucked the oxygen out of everything. And so Jeb Bush says, I'll bet $20 he shows up. Boy, that's a way to get in the news cycle. Make a $20 bet. My God. I mean, if you just wanted to look at like political impotence, here's this guy. So now he's going on O'Reilly tonight. And then he just is just great. There's no air out there. He just goes from one thing to another. And so the guy says, look, I could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and my people are going to vote for me. Well, if he thinks that, then why can't he drop out of a stupid debate? Of course he can. But everything that he does in the whole, just understand who's doing it too. I mean, the whole system is blinking. Something is and it's always been, and political scientists, and this is something, I've worked in 22 different countries. The single most predictable event in any democracy anywhere in the world is how U.S. Republicans have picked their presidential candidate. You have, from 1944 to 2012, you always knew before. It was the senior white guy. It always was. Every time, it is evidenced by John McCain, who is the oldest, whitest man that ever lived. I'm serious, you ain't never seen anybody whiter than John McCain in your life, or older. The only possible exception to that was Goldwater, and the Republicans acknowledged will tell you the base of the party had moved south and west. All right. This time, the possible, let me tell you, California, and California Republicans, this may be the money pitch. 10%, if you go look at Dave Washman or look at one of these spreadsheets of the delegates, the Republicans are going to pick 10% of their delegates in early June. In California, New Jersey, and some of the territories are going to be picking delegates in. It is very conceivable not a 3% chance, maybe not a 50% chance, that the California Republican primary will be the mother of them all. It usually doesn't count because you're so late. Now, I remember 1968 when Bobby Kennedy got shot tonight, the California Democratic primary, where it was still going, and you know, we were still trucking along, you know, to some extent in 92, although we had the nomination sewed up. So it could be a really, really interesting thing. Then if it breaks down, which is, I have Ben Ginsburg, who is the foremost Republican lawyer in the country, who basically broke the rules, and is going to go walk our students through, this is what happens by this date. And if it looks like, if you look at the polls, I just got texted a later poll, it looks like Rubio is really starting to separate himself from Bush and Kasich and Christie, at least in Iowa, and maybe a little bit in New Hampshire. So if you go with three, if you go with Rubio, Cruz, and Trump, and they start bouncing each other off, you could have a situation in people are never, you know, young people don't call it a brokered convention because they're not, doubt if they're going to be brokers, but it could be a contested convention. But what you may have, in Ohio, which has 66 winner-take-all delegates, Kasich will be out by the Ohio primary, but he may run in an old-fashioned way and say, give me 66 delegates, and I'm going to go bargain for Ohio. All right? It's possible that someone would run, I don't know if you can get on the ballot in California, and there's no statewide Republican of like any stature here that could sort of do it, but somebody might come in and say, let's elect a favorite son in California, and then we can get the candidate that we want. You're going to be an awful lot of power could devolve to very few people in this process. So we really are, we usually know. By this time, you knew it was going to be Romney. You knew they were going to nominate Newt Gingrich and Michelle Bachmann or Herman Cain. You knew in 2008 it was going to be McCain. Or you knew it was going to be Bush in 2000. We don't know. Now, on the Democratic side, it's not, do I think that Hillary is going to beat Bernie? I do. But Bernie has a lot of money and a lot of very fervent supporters. And every person that votes for Bernie in the winter, in the spring, has got to come out and vote for Hillary in the fall. So this requires some political dexterity, some political skill. And all of these delegates are going to go to Philadelphia, and they're going to be there with the, biofuel cars and Birkenstocks and, trail mix and energy drinks, and they're going to want a place, they're going to want a place at the table. They have a lot of delegates, and, we're going to see how this plays out. And he's raised a lot of money. I mean, he doesn't need to win. The people that are giving him money are not giving him money because they want to be the ambassador to the court of St. James. They're giving him money out of ideological or statements out of fervor. So I think we are, I tell my students, I just can't tell you how excited that I am to have y'all in a class at a time like this, because this is a time like no other. And, I'm really excited that so many of you guys came out to see us, because I think this is a thrilling thing that we're getting ready to go under. And I'll be honest with you, so far, this is every pundit on every question has made nothing but a fool out of themselves. And I don't know that I don't see any sign that it's going to stop, that there's, I think we're in just one of these great things where it's sort of turmoil. And the Trump phenomena is, people come back, they stop me and say, James, have you ever seen anything like this? And my answer is, frankly, no. And neither have you. So,
Yes, but it's not unimaginable or implausible, given everything we said about the frustration in the electorate and the transition in this stuff. But let's go back to some, at the granular level, at some of these contests, because James is right. First of all, why I think the pundits all want to say, and the large elements of the party want to have this done after Iowa and New Hampshire. I've been saying since last year, Iowa and New Hampshire are not going to be dispositive. The breadth of the field, the strategies for cherry picking in the second, there's three tranches. There's the highly competitive retail politics tranche, then the SEC primaries, which are proportional. So smart guys are doing what Obama did last time, and they're just going and cherry picking off districts, and then we get to the winner take all. But in between all of that, Cruz's 70% of Cruz's money is from small donors, and 70% of his bundlers have never raised money in a presidential campaign for. He's going to have money in the same way Bernie's going to have money. The party is really upset. Rubio he was the flavor of the day for the Jeb donors who want a consensus candidate. So if you look at the papers today, this really makes me mad, and this is going to make Republicans mad. These guys, and who do they think they are? These establishment people saying, if they don't fare well in Iowa and New Hampshire, they have to get out and coalesce around Rubio. They have to coalesce around anybody that's not named Trump or Cruz. That's a direct quote. I'm like, don't you get what's making people mad about who died and made you God? Okay, it's just not how that works. Okay, so you're going to keep perpetuating the anger, which is going to keep these primaries and conventions active. Then these contested convention, James is absolutely right about that. But let's add another wrinkle to this. Say salt and sugar denying Michael Bloomberg gets in. And there's not enough, hey, the more the merrier. So I say about gay marriage, why shouldn't they all be miserable? Let everybody get married. Just kidding, honey, just kidding. If there's no, but if there's been twice in America's history that the presidential contest has been thrown to the House of Representatives, 1800 and was 1824, 26, the other one. Okay, so that's not impossible. Okay.
No, it's not nothing. But if Trump wins Iowa, they're going to stop him. If Cruz can't win Iowa, which is designed for him, 70% evangelical, all right? Or if Bernie, by the way, if Bernie doesn't win Iowa, he's not going to be the nominee. If he can't win,
Wait, say that again. That didn't make any sense.
If Bernie does not, at some point, they're going to count votes Monday night. All right.
Bernie's not going to be your nominee, I thought you said.
I know, but if he doesn't win Iowa, he'll go away a lot faster. He'll go away. But on the Republican side, and this is the great unknown, that they know that people who vote habitually, if they all go out and show up at the caucuses, Cruz would probably win. They don't know if Trump's voters are going to come out. If they come out in Iowa, then it's safe to assume they're going to come out in South Carolina. Are they going to come out in California? Are they going to come out somewhere else? We're going to be able to, and the key number is this on the Republican side. The last time around, and I'm going to be close, so don't take this to the bank, but almost there, like 120,000 people caucused. If it goes north of 140,000, that means that Trump's going to do pretty well. The more that, on the Democratic side, when Obama won, it went from like 150,000 to 230,000. No one expected that. Now, are we going to have that kind of unexpected? And then people say, well, the polls are wrong. It's very hard to poll them. And remember, when you look at a poll on the Democratic side, there's a trick in the Iowa caucuses is that on the Democrats, because we make rules.
To be broken.
And if you don't get, so they say, all right, all of the Hillary people, you go over there in that corner, and the Bernie people, you go over in that corner, and the Martin O'Malley people, you get in the middle. So if you don't get 15%, then you have to go to one other corner. So that it's only going to be the top, you get one round, then the person that doesn't get 15 drops out. So obviously Martin O'Malley's going to be pretty confident in that prediction. He's going to be the guy. So where his 5% could be very determinative. Getting a little deep in the weeds, but it's important though. But just look at Monday night when you see the commentary, and someone says, "Well, from what we can tell, Bob, we're out here is that looks like historically high attendance at the Republican caucuses." That's probably good for Trump. Probably. If it's historic, if it looks like the caucus attendance on the Democratic side is going to approach or is going to be in the same level that we saw in 2008, I think that's going to be good for Bernie.
Can I give a corollary theory to that? We don't know. I would say that totally makes a lot of sense. But if somebody who has traipsed to these caucuses, and I know some of your colleagues have, they're not, you get how this works, right? You drive through sleet and ice and snow at I don't know how many degrees below zero. And it's not, you don't vote. It's not a 1 hour, it's a 3-hour thing. And you listen to speeches and people have to publicly advocate. And you can change. It's not, we have a threshold too, but you could, just because you've declared once, you can declare, again, these things could be switching all night long. Now, so whatever, that's why they are difficult to poll. Most of the pundits, with the exception of Donna Brazile, I'm trying to think of who else I've seen on TV that I trust. Donna and I have been in these caucuses, okay? So he's right generally, or he has that, what he's saying would be true of everything past. But I will say this about Cruz's operation. Again, I got no dog in the fight. Cruz has 900 people in a hotel room in Des Moines tonight. He's worked these precincts down to the bathroom level, okay? He's the only Republican that's ever been organized to this extent in Sioux County. I mean, he's just got a killer organization. I'm just saying, he is bringing out people that haven't come out in recent cycles because they've been dissatisfied with their options. It is true what you're saying about Trump, but he does not have an organization. But if he has no organization, he has no precinct captains, no turnout guys. One guy that was quoted in the New York Times saying he's a birther or something like that. Okay, so it's like you really got to get people out there.
I couldn't agree with you more.
I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong.
I couldn't agree with you more. If Cruz has the best organization, Trump has none. All right, to speak of. And Cruz has people living in dorms. He's sophisticated. But if more people if the turnout and Trump wins, that's going to tell you that in a lab condition, we're going to see what motivates people to vote. But I completely agree that Cruz has got it thought out to the nth degree, and Trump is just out there, gets up in the morning and says, "I'm going to do this crazy-ass thing today."
Sound familiar, honey?
He just does it.
It takes one to know one.
Looks at a stupid person and says, "What is that guy thinking?" Yeah, okay, that's what I'm going to say. I'm not, but yeah, so that's why I think that if Cruz, if Trump can win, if he can win in Iowa, he's going to be able to win anywhere. Because it is because of the complexity and what it takes to go out. Yeah, I think we're kind of making the same point here. You want to open it up to...
Can I just say one thing about James? Okay. Like, people always think why we're so different. We're not, obviously we respect each other's political views. A huge difference is I am very impatient with stupid people. He loves fools. He says, my daddy told me that being mad at stupid people is like being mad at grass or whatever he said. Okay, so...
Yeah, we got a lot of grass in there.
Okay, so he is so delighted with Donald Trump. He sits in his office laughing out loud, and not just at Tina Fey. Do you not?
Look, I mean, I am one of the great, I tell young people this, one of the great secrets in life is people that don't suffer fools well are continually unhappy. People that are amused and take pleasure in fools are continuously satisfied. I mean, I take more pleasure in stupid people than I do great art. Now, what am I going to see more in my life? Stupid
And
people
you know
or great
what?
art?
He pays as much for stupid people. He literally gives loans to people. I'm like, he's never going to pay that back. Oh, but he amuses me.
Yeah, I have like, you know, the king used to have jesters, you know, stupid people that sit around and tell him what he wants. It's the same thing.
So,
No, but I mean, I'm serious. It's getting mad. Daddy said, living in Louisiana, getting mad at stupidity like getting mad at grass. You just, you know, isn't it gone?
so on those wise notes, I want to encourage people to stand up and come to the mic.
Up here too. Can I just make one statement? This is a university. The First Amendment is in full force, and all I ask, if you want to give a speech, just let us know ahead of time. Okay? But if you want to ask a question, that's fine. Just say, I'm sorry, but I got the mic, and we'll give a speech, and go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you for being here. I do have a question. If this ultimate thing happens and Trump does take the Iowa contest, do you think that the Republicans perhaps may do a knee-jerk reaction and out of fear rally round Rubio?
They're trying to do that, and they're saying things. Well, a lot of the establishment and donors are gravitating to Trump on the grounds that he'll only be in for one term. They can cut deals with him. They'll be part. It's there. These are my friends saying this, as opposed to Cruz, who will bring in his own people. So they will, if Trump wins. Trump's already saying how much he likes Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. You think he's not going to cut deals with our guys? I mean, they will gravitate. There'll be a faction that will say, let's coalesce around Rubio on the grounds that they think Trump won't win a general election. But there'll be just as many who want to protect their own options in Washington. And that's when the party's going to blow up, unless people like me or not. I'm not anti-Trump. He's just not a conservative, okay? He's whatever he is, and he is many things. He may be a great TV guy and a building erector, but he's not presidential material.
No, he's not. Again, the key is he says the conservatives. He is not. But he's a giant. You know, he's a giant sort of disruptor. He's not going. Everything to be fine. This great Saturday Night Live skit where it's his first day in office, and they said, "Who's out waiting to see me?" He says, "The Mexicans. They have the check." You know, I mean, but again, and I mean this is a lover of stupid people. If a stupid person is thinking something, Trump is saying it. Now, the scary thing is there's a lot of stupid people in the country.
The short answer is yes, they're already trying to do that. To what impact, who knows? Because they all gravitated Jeb, gave him hundreds of millions of dollars. Jeb, it was a good governor, be a good leader, but it's money and establishment.
But he's going to bet $20. That's
all right, honey. It's counterproductive. Rubio just got the Des Moines Register endorsement. Well, people don't want establishment endorsements. Voters. So, yes, they're doing it. If it's going to be effective, I do not know.
Yeah, I think Rubio is going to do better because the kind of people that are going to be affected, 30% easy of the Republican Party describe themselves as moderate. And they will see that, you know, they get there and said, well, this is we got to do this. I think my prediction is Rubio will exceed expectations. But if Trump, if you're a Republican, not a conservative, not anything, but you would like to see realistically Cruz win, Trump not do that well, and Rubio run a stronger than expected third. That's the optimal result.
If you're what?
If you're just a Republican, in other words, you're Mauricio, you just want to win elections, right? If you're a Democrat, You want Hillary to win and Trump to win. But that's what you're pulling for. All right? If Rubio and Bernie win, then you can get on the great white telephone, is what we call the commode, Louisiana, and throw up.
Thanks for sharing, honey. I never heard that
Well,
one.
that's it. When people get drunk, they say he's talking in the great white telephone. God, I'm sorry. You see what you were getting? You thought you were going to get a stage speech now, didn't you?
I'm an unrepentant Democrat, but I was trying to think of a fair question for both of you. And so when Ms. Madeline talked about TARP, I was always wondering about the answer to Jon Stewart's question of why it is that TARP was designed to bail out the banks. Why wasn't it that we gave homeowners in the middle classes life savings are really in their homes? Why didn't we give homeowners who couldn't make the payments vouchers, because that would also guarantee that the banks would be saved, but the homeowners got to stay in their homes. Now, years after the financial crisis hit, our stock market is at record highs, and so people who are at the upper 1/10 of 1% have recovered all of their money, whereas people who lost their houses are out of their life savings.
Brother, we're in vigorous agreement, and if I was unclear in my remarks, I couldn't agree more with you, and they didn't even use TARP for what they said they were going to use TARP for, and there is a recurrence of over-leveraged and under-substantiated credit default swaps, and all that's going on again. And the market that is doing as well as it is, albeit with the recent volatility, is predicated on nothing. I mean, we're printing money into it and such. So yeah, we're in vigorous agreement. This is where the left meets the right. I'm not afraid at all of Hillary Clinton. I'm afraid of Elizabeth Warren. Okay, if Trump is like a goofy Elizabeth Warren. I mean, if it's the same kind of. Goes to your sentiment. I don't agree with Elizabeth Warren's prescriptives, but I agree with the analysis of the problem, and I think Republicans were mutually contributory to it. And then you add on top of that the stimulus why don't we just give we gave every American the money that went into the stimulus package, that's why people are upset, and that's not a right-left thing. That's a reality thing. So yes, we're in vigorous agreement.
This is where it's kind of hard. The banks are irresponsible, and so what did the government do? They gave money to the irresponsible players. That's what's the problem. The truth of the matter is that economics is not a morality play. All right, and then when you're in a financial crisis, and the banks are going under and everything is going under with them, you can inject a lot of liquidity back in the banks and save the banks, and in effect, quasi-save the economy. If you say we're going to help the homeowners, then you got to figure out how much help and who's underwater, and does the guy in Covina get it, and the guy in Rancho Mirage not get it? Or does the lady in Bakersfield get it, and at what kind of thing, and you become this sort of giant bureaucratic trying to figure it out, why did they get this, I didn't get that. You're right, it's disgusting, it's terrible that the very people who were irresponsible had to come in and get it, but it's either that, or what they would say, it's either that, or as Bush said, the whole sucker's going to go under. And that it's the whole sucker going under. It was unsatisfying. People feel like it was irresponsible. But what we know now is that what we were told by Hyman Minsky, that these credit cycles devour themselves, and we should do the kinds of things that people want to do, is try to prevent this from happening. But I understand, I feel your pain. This doesn't sound like a very smart political thing to say, but under the circumstances, I think they made the only choice they could make.
Yeah, but they shouldn't have had to
That-
come to that juncture, because it wasn't irresponsible banks per se. That presumes that anybody who's in banking or the loan business or insurance business or whatever are instinctively or inherently corrupt. There is some level of logical response to government policies that were incentivizing loaning to unworthy borrowers, okay? It was the government that not only allowed this. I was in the administration when Bush kept saying, it's an opportunity, everyone wants a house. And I kind of, I got it, but it didn't make economic sense to me. It didn't, okay. Then, everyone says Republicans are anti-regulation. I'm pro-regulation if they're transparent, accountable, equally accessible, and enforceable. What's the answer to this? Dodd-Frank? The Volcker Rule? Volcker doesn't even know what the Volcker Rule is, okay? That's not accessible regulatory reform. The SEC wasn't doing its job. They were watching porn. The Moody's. Did you ever see Big Short yet? Did you see the Big Short?
I really don't. If you want to believe that it was a bunch of poor people borrowing money
I don't.
that caused
That's
the
not what-
financial crisis and not irresponsible 35-to-1 leverage ratios.
Did I
Okay, just
say
said
that?
it was not caused, again, I don't want to relitigate the financial crisis.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, again, I don't want to relitigate the financial crisis, all right? It wasn't, in a lot of it was shadow banking, was countrywide, was not institutions that were covered as a result of Glass-Steagall. But it goes. I just want to go back and I'll move to the next question and say I think they did the best they could do under the circumstances, which was totally unsatisfying.
Okay, next.
As a millennial, I feel a lot of my friends are telling me that I should be voting for Bernie Sanders. What is the argument in voting for Hillary Clinton in terms of policy?
Well, I mean, the argument is the argument is this. Do you want to live in the world that you get, you have Obamacare, 90% of the people are covered. When the rest of the states take the Medicaid, of which they're all getting ready to do, it'll be 95. So do you build on that to try to get to 100? Or do you just start all over again? Of which you're not going to be able to do. You passed Obamacare by one vote in the Senate and one vote on the Supreme Court. Do you really think that they're going to pass universal, free health and dental care for everybody in the country? Of course they're not. Do you really think that we're going to dismantle an already existing huge industry called the health insurance industry? All of these companies that do that, every claims processor, everything that's sat up here, every faculty member, every union member that has a plan, and they're going to say, no, you don't have that plan. That plan is gone. It no longer exists. You're now in the National Health Service. And does somebody really think that that's going to happen? I mean, you stop. Now, if you're saying to me, I'm just disgusted with the whole thing. If you say, Hillary says, okay, college is expensive. We're going to try to reduce the way we do student loans. We're going to try to give people sort of a payback. We're going to help give some money here and there. We're going to try to cut costs at Cal State, at Cal Poly, Pomona by 23%. Bernie says, but it's going to make it free. I mean, do you really think that you're going to be able to do that? I can't. And by the way, this is not just James Carville's reaction. It has been amazing. The entire center-left, progressive, commentary, intellectual infrastructure is of the same opinion. I mean, you cannot take something in a country that's already been sort of built and it's all into the infrastructure. Now, maybe you would say, if we were going to start all over and build a healthcare system, maybe we would build one like Sweden. A lot of people said it makes sense. We could argue, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to disrupt an entire industry, an entire way that people get health insurance. You get your health insurance, you have a plan. It was probably negotiated, the faculty senate, it goes through this. if you're a policeman, you have a plan. If you work for, someone else, and yet, then some people fall through the cracks, the idea is to try to get them. You cannot, and by the way, think of how many people work processing these claims, how many people work for, health insurance, how many investors are there, how many of this. You can't unring a bell. It's just the bell's been rung for good or worse. And so that's why I would say, come on, man, we just lived through this. You really think that, now if what it is, you said, I'm just angry and I want somebody to get my attention, so I'm going to vote this way and it's going to make me cool with my friends. Okay, I can't argue with that either.
Mary, do you want to say something to that?
I haven't really thought about any age group why they should vote for Hillary, so I feel qualified to answer.
Okay, so let's go over here. Do you want to ask a question?
I just read that about 42% of the electorate is now identifying as independent. With that in mind, Mary said a couple of interesting words, and that's Michael Bloomberg, who is now, as I understand, still considering a possible run. What effect do you think that might have? Now, granted, a lot of people in here, especially the kids, may not even know who he is. But he's about as big a centrist as you can get. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have many thoughts on it. First of all, people are saying they're independents because they reject being labeled as either Democrats or Republicans.
Well, he was a Republican and then a
He
Democrat.
was a Republican, he was a Democrat, he was a conservative, he's very conservative on cops and reform and charter schools. The charter school guys, to everybody we know of every political persuasion in the city loves him,
Hates sodas.
except for I don't like the nanny state thing, and I'm a salt eater. I climb up the cabinet and take the salt and just pour it in my mouth. So I don't, and I like trans fats. Like they ruined McDonald's French fries. So that's so I don't think that's the role of government. But he does have enough money, and for him to spend $1 billion, someone did this comparison, that would be the equivalent when compared to Trump's fortune of $1,650. I mean, the guy is rich. $1 billion is nothing. So he could do it. He's got a very sophisticated, smart team who's already laid out a plan to get on the ballot as an independent. That's why I brought it up, because he must see a path or he wouldn't even try. So he's going to decide by March. The history of independent contestants has been like bees. They sting and they die, or they throw the race to somebody like Perot did or something like that. So they upset the dynamic difference. However, this is already an upside down cycle. And if there was ever a time an independent could be successful in a two-party country, it would be this cycle. I mean, it doesn't preclude everything else we said about the conservatives would still blow up, because there'd still be a lot of other turmoil. But there could be enough turmoil that a Bloomberg could get through, and that's obviously what he's thinking, and a lot of people in New York, he's telling a lot of people in New York, obviously, he's thinking about it.
First of all, the term independent, it all depends on how you ask the question. If I ask you, are you a Republican, Democrat, or Independent, I'll elicit a certain response. If I ask you, are you a Republican or a Democrat, I'll elicit another response. If you say that you're an independent, and I say, do you mostly vote Democratic or Republican? Because if you describe yourself as an independent, but you voted Republican in 9 out of the last 10 elections, you're not really an independent. You're a Republican. And the number of people that are truly independent is 7%, maybe 8%, because once you bore down. Now, on Michael Bloomberg, this is a good tip. I do not know of a single Democratic political professional that is not ill at the thought of Michael Bloomberg running. I don't know of a single Republican political professional that is not gleeful at the prospect of Michael Bloomberg running. And the simple reason is that the things that he would say and the voters that he would siphon off, or at least Democrats believe, and I'm one of them, that he would take a lot more votes from Democrats and Republicans. Now, whether he does this or not, it's a very complicated procedure to get on there. But I could not think of a single thing short of maybe nominating Bernie Sanders that would go further toward helping elect a Republican than Bloomberg running as an independent. That would be, that's all I would say guaranteed, but
Wow, he just changed my mind on supporting his candidacy. I hadn't really thought that out.
believe me, you have a lot of friends that are urging him that would like to see him run, because here's a guy, all right, he's the biggest anti-gun, take action on climate change, et cetera, et cetera. I really, the only possible effect that he could have, and when he looks at it, they're just 40% of the people in this country that are going to vote for a Democrat no matter what. They just, and there's a third, or maybe, 35% that are just hardcore Republicans. And so you say, well, gee, that leaves me with 25 left to draw from. That's a hard number to draw to. So, but, a guy 73 years old, and he's rich, man. I mean, he's like really, really rich. So if I had, $23 billion and I could spend $1 billion doing something I wanted to, well, why not? I could live off of $22 billion. He's 73. No, so I don't know. But that's the short answer is.
Hey, rich people don't think like we think, okay? Let me make the counter argument. I'm not disagreeing with this. There are a lot of Republicans who think I'm crazy, who aren't conservatives, who like the idea of, if only in name, an independent or a problem solver or ran a big city or, one of the advocacies of or message favorabilities for Trump is he's a business guy. He knows how to solve problems. Well, Bloomberg is the better version of that. He has better hair, he has better everything, okay? So I can see where a lot of conservatives who aren't Attila the Hun like me would be attracted to a Bloomberg candidacy.
Yeah, maybe if Cruz was a candidate. I'm just giving you the way. And by the way, just so you know, myself and my friends have been wrong about a lot in this cycle, and it's very possible we could be, and maybe if they nominate Cruz, there's a lot of moderate Republicans, but it just, I don't, the guy is smart, and he's getting into something, but we don't know what's going to happen. Look, the whole thing could break down. If the Democrats nominate Bernie and the Republicans nominate Cruz, Bloomberg may win. That's a real possibility at that point. I mean, we're just going to have to wait and count the votes. Let's go, because we're running short on time.
I've worked on a couple local campaigns, and I know the hardest thing to do is to get the candidate to listen to your advice. Yeah, if you were working a campaign this election cycle, which candidate would you like to work for, and what one piece of advice would you like to give him? What knuckleheaded thing would you like to tell him to stop doing?
I'd like to work for Hillary and tell her to stop arguing about the establishment.
What?
All right?
I don't even get that.
We got to get into, not how you're going, every presidential election, when they're not talking about how they're going to make about you and talking about themselves or each other, is a day that you lost. People really want to have an election about them and their lives, and their hopes and their dreams and what they want. And, it's such a contrast, and so that's what and actually I do say that to them, that for God's sakes, don't argue how much of the establishment you are. Say we need to establish more affordable health care, we need to establish better manufacturing base, we need to establish, more access to higher education, we need to blah, 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 blah. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mary.
What about you, Mary?
Well, this is a non-point question for me because I do know all the candidates and I do know all the workers on all the campaigns and I'm in regular touch with all of them and I've had Carly and Ben Carson and Cruz at my house and I go to all Jeb's events. So the best thing about being this age is I don't care what people think of my advice, and so I say whatever I want to say, and I know it's the truth. And you know what I found out? The less they pay you, the more they listen to you. So what frustrates me, and I've said this to them, I've said it publicly, I don't want to work in any of these campaigns because I love them all. I'm not for man, I'm for message, and by man, I mean that gender-free. What I really told all the candidates to their face and the campaigns until my eyes are bleeding, don't fight with Trump because he's going to kick your ass. And you're going to get off your message and you're going to validate his message, which is you're detached from people. And they all took the bait except for Cruz. Now, we were in the last final week, but the first guy out, it was particularly irksome when Jeb did it, because Jeb was running as a happy warrior, and he was running as a competent conservative with nobody remembered Jeb Bush. When I was working with his daddy and his brother, Jeb was the extremist, the conservative extremist, and everybody thinks he's the left winger of the group. So the last thing he needed to do was what he did, and same with the rest of them. In case it kind of got in, I think this is a cycle for conservatives to stay on message, and Trump was the sirens, a very seductive sirens call.
Okay.
Hi, I feel that a common theme is sort of the dissatisfaction with the division in government, with the difficulty of getting policy passed for both parties. So I guess two questions are, what do you think the likelihood is of one party achieving both the presidency and the majority in Congress, and what effects do you think that would have?
The first thing is that you would agree that the government should represent the people.
You use your mic.
I mean, basically, the truth, man, the country is divided. I mean, what we're seeing, it's not just that the politicians are divided, and all the people in the country are all thinking the same thing and want to be united and together. The truth of the matter is that very different sort of views in the country, and politics reflects that. I think the sorting and the stuff we talked about earlier are reflective of that. If you want a unified government, you're probably going to have to vote for a Republican presidential candidate because it's very difficult for a lot of complicated reasons, but I'm sure that the political science department has explained to these students how hard it is. For the Democrats to win the House of Representatives, they have to win by like 6.5 points, which is, and we can argue whether that constitutes a democracy or not. All right, that's a good question. So it may be, my guess is, in what I said earlier about the consequences for both parties, or village back. But, one thing about American politics is we get in a thing and it can change really quickly. And again, I go back to, American politics is going to look nothing like a year from now like it looks today. I can promise you it's going to really be different.
And I know this might sound boring, hopefully not to you poli-sci people. The founders divined the system to make it not easy to ram policy through. That's why we're checks and balances in the saucer of the Senate that lets the hot coffee tea, which precludes majority tyranny and stuff like that. So there's a reason that this takes a long policy, important policy is problematic because it should be. And the presumption that one-party rule would result in grease through a goose policy making is a specious one because whatever party, Republicans have had essentially one-party rule in chambers, and they didn't get squat done. So Republicans are divided, and Democrats are divided. So would it be fun for poli-sci students to study these campaigns and, A, see how negative they were? We are completely gracious in comparison. And then the nature of the arguments and the difficulty of passing policy. James, what's that movie you love so much that's indicative?
My favorite
illustrative?
political movie, I make my students see it, is Lincoln.
Yeah.
Because in its message is simply this: it just shows you how hard it is to get anything done. I mean, here you are, you have won re-election, you're going to win the war, all right? You already know that you're in the, books going to be written about you, monuments made of you, and you're trying to ban slavery. And you have to trade every vote, you have to ostrate, you have to be consumed, you got to bring people in, you have to browbeat them, you got to count votes, you got to do everything, and then finally he gets it done and he gets shot. The thing to remember is this stuff is really, really, really hard. When Scott Walker got out of the race, his campaign manager said the smartest thing in the cycle. He said, this is really hard. And those folks are out there, and this is really tough stuff. And you get in there and look at all of the, the Obamacare or the Clinton things, one vote. It's all down to that. It's not, Bismarck was right. You shouldn't watch sausage laws be made. It's all, but that's the real sort of point of all this is, it's not easy. And the most incremental things that you do are, and I guess that's the big point I want to make here is, we talk about politics, it's the community. Look at how many people come out tonight that care. When I saw these young people, it's just like these people lined up. We have to cut it off. They had questions. They knew what was going around. They're aware of their surroundings. They know what they're facing in life. So I think we're going to see, I think people are involved. And I think we're in, I know we're in for a cycle. I don't know. I wish I knew what the hell was going to happen. But I know it's going to be a lot. And I think that y'all have, this community is very fortunate to have a place like this. I was looking at the stuff they do in the hospitality thing. It's just really terrific. And the diversity here, the sense that I think all these young people have that they're included in this community here, I think is a great thing. And it's been a big honor for Mary and I to be here. And I'm actually glad I know Mary is, because she wanted this, that we could have a conversation as opposed to a lecture or a speech or anything like that. So you're terrific people. Anyone?
All right, I think that's it, and I really want to thank you for your passion and energy. I know it's good for democracy that you care so much about this, and you set a good model for our students, and so thank you again. And
One more round of applause.
Excuse me. I had a question for each candidate, and I was really hoping to ask.
well, we ended at 8:30, so but we're going to...
Let him
All right.
It was one question for each of you, and I would like to start off by saying that I don't vote Democrat or Republican. I vote for which candidate's going to look for the best interests of the United States in the long term. And I have a question for each one of you. James, I'd like to start with you saying, what's your opinion on the fact that when you look at the midterm elections, and the fact that, yes, the Republicans have won the most recent midterm election, but the fact that the millennials in my generation are known for not actually showing up for that, and it's not actually a true representation of what the American population might want. And
Now, we
that
got a
is-
question, or you want to give a speech?
I
Okay,
would
you
like
said
my
you had a
point to be
question.
heard, and I would like your
What-
opinion on it.
My opinion is this: if you don't show up, it's nobody's fault but your own. Okay? So, in the way the system works, if you don't vote, you don't count.
All right.
So, my suggestion is to vote and count.
And then for Marie, I would like to ask you a question as well.
I like Marie.
Marie, whichever you prefer. For the election with Bernie Sanders, the fact that he's getting so much of his money from small donations, and that he's not relying on a big PAC, he's not relying on major corporations to donate a whole lot of money. What's your opinion on this situation, the fact that almost everybody that's running right now is dependent on these $1 million PACs, whereas Sanders is the only one that's getting individual donations from everyone like us?
Well, first I would check your facts. There are more people in this race that are not taking corporate big PAC contributions. Cruz, I think I said was 70%. I'm not, just look it up, okay? Cruz's 70% of his donations are from grassroots. 70% of his bundlers have never done it before. Bernie's not taking it. Trump's certainly not taking any
He
money. I am
self-funds.
not an advocate of, I'm an advocate of free speech, and you should be able to pay for that if you want to, but it should be totally transparent. But I'm with James on if you don't vote, you don't count. But I also think it's important for candidates to speak to young people, not pander to young people, and address what's really, or make you understand what are your issues. It's hard for young people to think about the future, and the candidates aren't doing a very good job at that.
All right, man, I got your question in for you.
Thank you for trying to answer my question.
Thank you. So James and Mary will be doing a book signing. Please line up beyond the stanchions if you'd like to have a book signed. Okay, I'll go with you.
And folks, we are selling books still. So